Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Microsoft 365 Business Boost Show. I am your host, or one half of your host, Thurman Trotman. Other half of our host here is my guy, Nick DeCourcy. Nick, how you doing?
Hi. Good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm always great. You know what I mean? Today we got two topics on the table today, Nick. We're talking about Teams vanishing from Microsoft 365, and we're going to be talking about the new planner. Is it good for project managers? That's the topics that we're going with today, and I'm excited to get started. So let's do this. So we like to get rocking and rolling here. I want to talk to you about Teams going away from Microsoft 365. If you saw the article this week on MSN.com, you saw that Microsoft announced and implemented a removal of Teams from the new tenant E1 through E5 licenses.
Hmm.
You are obviously knee deep in this and understand what's going on. I'd like for you to give your opinion on what you think is happening here, and then also what business owners, obviously, because this is the Microsoft 365 Business Boost Show, what business owners what does this mean for them, basically?
Well, I think, first of all, if you're already using Microsoft 365 and you already have your tenant in place, then this doesn't mean anything right now unless you're of the mindset of, we really don't like Teams, we don't want to use Teams, and you want to save a couple of dollars per user by having the opportunity to turn it off, in which case you can do that if you're on enterprise licensing right now. But if you're someone who hasn't got your Microsoft 365 tenant, if you're just thinking, hey, I would really like to move over to Microsoft 365 because of Copilot or something like that, then unfortunately, if you want to use Teams, then you're going to be wanting to, you're going to need to pay a little bit more money than you were previously.
Right.
So, I think this is interesting. The rationale for this was a couple of months ago, maybe a bit longer. Microsoft did this in Europe because they were under scrutiny for anti-competitive practices in bundling everything together, including Teams. So now they've decided to roll this out worldwide to give people more choice. But what it means is that people starting fresh with the status quo of what we have today are just going to end up paying more. I'm not sure how much of a choice it is, frankly. Teams is so integrated into Microsoft 365. At some point, I'm going to need to buy this and take a look at what does it mean to have Teams without Microsoft 365 and what does it mean to have Microsoft 365 without Teams. Because, for example, the only place, if you're a Copilot user right now, the only place that you could use plugins for Copilot is inside Teams.
Mm-hmm.
So if you choose not to have Teams and you buy Copilot, do you get a lesser Copilot experience because you have Teams turned off?
Yes, you do.
Yeah, well,
I'd
maybe.
imagine you do.
I would bet you do as well. I don't really know, though. I'm a little bit confused. Like, Teams is built upon Outlook, it's built upon, or built upon Exchange, it's built upon SharePoint. Like, what are you actually not getting when you turn Teams off, and what are you getting when you just turn Teams on for $5.25 a month? It's all a little bit confusing, I think. And in the back of my mind is the rationale for why this happened was that Slack made a complaint to the EU back before Slack was bought by Salesforce, if I recall correctly. But I just wonder what would happen if Dropbox made a complaint about OneDrive. What would happen if Calendly made a complaint about bookings? What would happen if Notion made a complaint about Loop? Like we
Or
talk
Trello made a complaint about Planner.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
exactly. We talk about the value proposition, the amazing value proposition that we see in Microsoft 365 as a reason to buy it as a package and to buy that suite. But how solid are the foundations that value proposition is built upon if a company like Slack, which I think notionally competes with Teams, but does it really compete with Teams? I mean, in certain markets, yeah, people like Slack, but the average business doesn't start just like, oh, what should we use? Let's go buy Slack,
Right.
But if the foundation is so shaky because you get a complaint by a company like that, then what other risks are sitting out there for a company like Microsoft? And ultimately, that means what risks are sitting there for our wallets when all of this at some point in the future perhaps starts to be pulled apart.
Yeah, so Slack, I don't want to, make Slack look like some small boys on the block. You know what I'm saying? They do their thing, and they are competing, and they were doing what Teams started out doing years ago. Like Slack was the go-to. Everybody loves Slack. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people still use Slack. So cool. But obviously they're not Microsoft. You know what I'm saying? And then also Teams has graduated from what it used to be when it first was competing with Slack to where it is now. Which brings me to my point. Teams by itself, raising the price on Teams, I ain't really too mad at that because Teams is huge. Like all the things you could do with Teams. Specifically saying that the price of Teams is going to go up a little bit because of this situation, it's like, okay, I get it. But saying that, you know, Teams is going to be unbundled, that I do not get. That is very confusing to me because, to your point again, how do you unbundle? Like, how is that even a thing? Teams is way too integrated to be able to be unbundled. You understand what I'm saying? So yeah, again, I just don't get how I don't get how you can unbundle Teams. It's way too integrated into the rest of the platform. It's not like it's I was gonna say bookings, but I can't even say bookings because that's integrated with Outlook. I can't think of one. And that and
I can think of one, Thurman.
wait, which one?
Loop.
Well, not even Loop. You can't even say Loop now because Loop.
Oh, I mean, kind
Loop
of
would be-
like it's less integrated than anything else is, and
Okay, all right, let's say that.
this is the new thing. So, is one of the reasons that it's less integrated than everything else is because Microsoft sees a future where it has to be able to turn these things on and off, and so this deep
Okay.
integration doesn't make sense anymore.
That's a good point, but you cannot think of the overhaul that Teams and all these other apps have to go through if they can't be bundled. You said, what if Dropbox makes a complaint? If Dropbox makes a complaint, what does Microsoft do? Unbundle SharePoint or unbundle OneDrive? Like
Yeah.
how do you do that? You know what I'm saying? That's one of the core things about using the 365 suite. It's no doubt you got all these apps and they're powerful and one low price and all this other stuff. But on top of that, you can integrate all over the place with all of these apps. You know what I'm saying? All different which ways. So if you unbundle, you now make either integration extremely difficult. I won't say unavailable because you could always integrate, but you'll make it just there's a lot of friction, and we don't want that.
But do you make it more risky? I think that's the other question. That on one hand, like look at what's going on politically with this, right? On one hand, you have governments up in arms about anti-competitive practices, but on the other hand, you also have governments up in arms about IT security, data security, privacy, etc. Every time, in my opinion, particularly with the size of business that I'm generally working with, small and medium sized businesses, every time you add an additional tool, you're adding additional risk because there's more management there, there's more things to learn. You might be working with a small team, you might be working with a small MSP. I mean, when we had Jesse on the show a couple of weeks ago, we talked about this idea of a lot of MSPs are very small. They know certain things, they don't know everything. As soon as you're choosing an additional tool, you're adding additional risk. And
Right.
these two ideas are smacking up against one another, in my opinion, to create a situation where what is the right thing to do? For a company like Microsoft, deep integration that is all leveraging the same security principles, the same management approaches, makes sense from a security and data privacy compliance perspective. It doesn't make sense to be able to create these situations where you just plug stuff in and take stuff off. Because how do you make that security wrapper work? I think as a society we need to make a decision here. Like, are we safer with some fairly big monopolies, the wrong word, duopolies, triopolies, I don't know. Like, are we happy with the idea that we have like a handful of companies that are big enough to do this reasonably well most of the time, and those are the ones that we're going to invest in? Or do we want to break them up and then have to make these decisions about which are we going to use, while all of these pressures around compliance and privacy and governance still sit with us as the business owners?
Yeah, there's pros and cons to both ways, but the I guess I say the problem is that it's going to be handled in courts. Like what we sit here and say and think is the best move, and even if Microsoft agrees with our theory and they say, yeah, the best thing is for us to do X, Y, and Z, the court is going to say something that the court wants to say. The court will be the final decision. And that kind of sucks because it's not like on the court you have like security experts or people who know, how this thing works. They could get themselves spun up, hopefully, but that's a risk. To your point, this security thing. When Microsoft adds a new tool, they're not necessarily adding a new tool. You know what I'm saying? They're
Mm.
keeping their platform, governing things the same way, and adding a new, like a concept. You know what I mean? And or not a separate tool where once you start unbundling, you're now making these things separate. And like you said, you introduce more risk. I There's pros and cons. But I'm gonna tell you what side of the fence I'm on. If when you get too big to fail,
Mm.
that's where Microsoft is right now. We can't have a Microsoft fail and then, the next up and comer try to like duplicate and then do better than all the things Microsoft has done for all of these years that they've, been basically, supporting. I don't even know what the market share is, but they're too big to fail. So I'm on the side of do not unbundle these things. You know what I'm saying? Especially since the second reason is this user experience. Like all of the complaints about Loop will just become times 10 if you start unbundling things. And I don't like it. You know what I'm saying? I don't think that's the way they should go. We're gonna. It doesn't matter what I say.
Oh, it's already happening. I think the issue is them, and that you're right. This will end up in courts, but the courts are always playing catch up. Like the courts are dealing with it after all of our data has been lost, after all of our emails have been revealed, after all of our bank accounts have been emptied. That's when the courts get the opportunity to deal with these things, right? So when it comes to this IT security stuff, we're at a great deal of risk with that because it's just moving so incredibly quickly. And I don't purport to be an expert in this. I don't think that you do either from the IT security perspective, but
Mm-mm.
we know enough to know that it's safer to have to become knowledgeable on less than to have to become knowledgeable on more to get all this
Right.
situated. And unfortunately, that's not the direction that the legal greats are going on right now.
Right. And I'm definitely gonna keep an eye out to see if Slack, which they already did in the EU, you know what I'm saying, if this like really puts a dent in things, the final decision here, I wonder if, to your point, all these other companies are gonna complain because that they have an issue. If you sat there all that time, built up a really great app, and then Microsoft maybe tried to swoop in and purchase, and you said no, and then they went and just copied what you did, why wouldn't you take the time out to go and make a complaint? You know what I'm saying? If it's financially not too, out of control for your company, excuse me, and you say, all right, let's do it. We have a bone to pick too. It could turn into a whole thing. So let's hope that it doesn't. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the new planner, there, Nick, is now
Yeah.
out. You know what I'm saying? You've had a chance to, mess around with it. I know I definitely had a little bit with it. You know what I mean? I didn't go deep with it, but I will be soon because Planner is one of my favorite apps inside of the suite. But now that it's here and it's generally available, what do you think? Do you think this is a good tool for project managers? What are your thoughts?
Um, well, yeah, I think that there's some some glimpses of opportunity here. I'll say, where we've got it right now is in Teams. So we will be getting an experience as a web-based experience for the new Planner as well. So that's to come. So if you're someone who uses Planner on the web as opposed to using Planner in Teams, then you're not seeing the new experience yet. But I did a video on this. I like it, but there are some questions. I mean, I think that the biggest questions are not with the new way that Planner is being approached. The idea of joining things together makes a lot of sense. The biggest questions that I had were to do with the two things that have been sold as the more kind of premium features of Planner, the integration with Project for the Web and the integration of Copilot. Both, in my opinion, were a little bit confused and not really where we wanted them to be. But to your question, is this a tool for project managers? Well, I think it depends. What are you using as a project manager right now? If you're using Project, like Desktop Project or Project Online, you're probably not going to say, oh, hey, this new planner has enough now that I don't need to use these tools anymore. And by the flip side, if you're someone who is managing small projects and you've got away with using Planner up until now, maybe there's been a couple of things that you've been looking for. I'm not sure that the addition of Project for the Web capabilities for $10 a month as it stands, or if you want Copilot $30 a month as it stands, are going to be enough that a lot of people are going to say, hey, I need to make the jump to paying for that. And that pricing may change. I don't think yet we know exactly what Planner Premium might cost versus the project licenses that give you access to this stuff.
Right.
But I think it depends on what types of projects are you managing and what are you using. I know that, Thurman, you do a lot of work with people who are managing projects and maybe their project management system is Excel, so if you're using Excel, can you step into Planner and it's going to make your life better, even the free version? Yeah, and I think the integration of to-do items across the board and being able to see them all in one place, this is wonderful, not just for a project manager, but for anyone who's using Microsoft 365 to hold on to their task lists.
Yeah, most definitely. But even beforehand, I thought that you could do that already in some sense, like have all your tasks all in one area.
It's getting better. I mean, it's still not 100%. There are still instances of places where Microsoft kind of flags what you're doing as creating a task list, where that doesn't end up in Planner. The biggest one that I've used in the past is the task list that you create in OneNote. Like they don't move over to Planner, they don't end up on your tasks. So it's still a little bit of a mixed bag there, but I do think it's getting better. And this has been the trajectory over time. This has been something that's been hugely confused for a long time. There's been like 10 different ways of creating tasks across Microsoft 365. Yep. So any way of bringing that together is fantastic. But is it 100% there? No, it's probably like 80, 90% at this point.
Yeah, definitely need some more time. And then the other thing too, I'm in the market. I am the person who is managing small projects for myself, and I use Planner a lot. Like I love Planner. Am I gonna now upgrade to Project? No, I'm not gonna do that, especially if I'm gonna have to pay for it, because what I get with Planner already takes care of everything. I'm good to go. Now, that being said, if they were okay, I have a bone to pick with Planner. I think I have mentioned on this show before. My issue with Planner is that there is no way. Oh my goodness, I got a dog in the background. You gotta pardon me. There's no way for me to delete items, or have a track record of me deleting items. So if I or someone else on the team deletes a task off of the Planner board, it's gone. If they delete it, they're given like 2 or 3 seconds to click undo, I believe, and it'll come back. But if they don't click undo, there's no recycle bin. There's
like an audit trail, you mean?
There's nothing for me to be able to recover this task. And that in and of itself is a risk. You can't do that. So Microsoft doing this thing that they're notorious for is, hey, everybody complains about thing B. Microsoft goes and not only fixes and creates things C through F, but they completely ignore thing B. And so in this case, they've done it again. They've upgraded Planner and did not make it that now you can have an audit trail of these items that you delete. Unacceptable. But if you can get past that, which I think you would be able to do with like a very small team, maybe you and a few other people, if you can get past that, Planner's a great tool for project managers. It's a just by itself, without the upgrade. It's great by itself. So I would definitely recommend you use it. But I tell everyone every time, take note. You cannot delete items and have an audit trail of these items. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like it. Not matter of fact, I don't like it. I love it because I use it for more than just tasks. If I have to, how people like to jot a bunch of ideas down on sticky notes. I don't do that. I jot my ideas down on a planner board because I can drag and drop. I don't have a bunch of sticky notes all over my desk. You know what I'm saying? Like I can find it on my phone and also on desktop. So I'm good. I like Planner a lot. I just wish Microsoft would fix that thing. And for project managers, I do recommend it as long as no audit trail. I mean,
For smaller projects, though, I would say, Thurman.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
the big thing that jumping up to the premium gives you is dependencies, and I think
Mhm.
that's a big thing that's missing from the basic planner,
Mhm.
because I think that's something that comes up quite regularly, that you want to have these idea of dependencies where you need to finish one task before another task
Right.
starts, and so on and so forth. And that
Yep.
is something that you get there with that premium upgrade. I think the problem is, and so far as I'm aware, they're not calling this. They're certainly not licensing this as Planner Premium right now. I'm not sure whether Microsoft has used the term Planner Premium directly or whether this is something that's just come out of the community. But this sense of there being a premium upgrade for something, a lot of the time we're not talking about like a premium upgrade is better. The base is something you like, and the premium is something you're going to like more.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time, what we're talking about is just something different. We're not talking about something that's the premium of the base version. We're talking about a product that's for a different category of user or
Right.
for a different set of tasks. And I think that's exactly the case with Planner. Of most people could probably get away with the basic Planner, and there are some people that will have certain things they need to do where they need the premium upgrade. But it's not like the people who have those basic task needs are going to get anything by going to that premium upgrade. They're never going to touch it.
Yeah. That second phase or whatever phase it was of Planner, you could call that like a premium upgrade because Planner
Mm.
used to be. There's a lot of features that Planner has right now that they didn't have before. So you could have called that it. But yeah, in this case, you're kind of like you're just putting tools together. You're
Yeah,
meshing things together and
it's this
calling it premium.
bundling. Going back to our last topic, is this bundling of
Yeah,
services.
yeah.
At some point in the future, do we have to unbundle project from Planner?
Oh
It's
my goodness.
very confusing. It's a very confusing set of paths that we're on with this stuff.
I agree. I agree. Nick, well, it is time to get out of here, unfortunately. But before we go, I always like to ask, what do you got going on? What would you like to, tell people to do or where to find you and all that other good stuff?
So come and take a look at my LinkedIn. That's a great place to find me. For the time being, my on-demand course "Fly into the Age of Copilots" is still free on my website. So if you haven't signed up to that, do get signed up to that. If you're interested in finding out about how to deploy AI across your business. But beyond that, just go and check out my content on LinkedIn. How should people find out about you, Thurman, and what have you got going on?
Well, you already know. Make sure you find me on LinkedIn. I'm there every day, all day. You know what I'm saying? Well, I won't say all day, but I'm there every day. And right now, I do also have a course. I would call it more like a class. It's a class, a few weeks, like 8 weeks right now. Where if you are a project manager that works in government contracting, you win these contracts, and then after you win the contract, all of your assets that you have to manage after winning the contract, it's always disorganized. This course will teach you how to build a site and be able to efficiently manage all of those assets that you win, all those assets that you manage after you win the contract, you and your team. So just find me on LinkedIn. You'll see the link. We can also put the link to waiting list. By the time I think they see this, that'll be the last day of the waiting list. But if you get in there, I'll change your life. Hopefully, somebody will see this and get on there. So yeah, The name of the course is contract navigation. It's a really longer name, but contract navigation is all you need to know. And again, just follow me on LinkedIn. So yeah, Nick, it was a pleasure as usual. Can't wait to do this again.
Yeah, see you next time.
All right, good deal.
All right, bye bye.
All righty.